So yeah, Hayes, you lost at Rockygrass.
I lost
Uh,
at Rockygrass, dude.
it's funny you say lost at. I didn't. I wasn't about to say that you lost at Rockygrass. Right before we started recording, Hayes said we could talk about how I lost at Rockygrass, which is so funny because I was going to suggest that we start by talking about how you almost won at Rockygrass.
Yeah, yeah, we're glass half full versus half empty over here today,
Yeah, it's all a matter of perspective. You're almost a big winner.
Yep.
And yeah, this is this is not related, but I did hear somebody say, are you glass half empty, you glass half full? And somebody's answer was like, it's a beautiful glass. Wow, that's very deep. That's
I
really
love,
something.
dude, I think that can be applied to this situation, you know?
Yeah, well,
I
I have a lot of questions about this because well, we've never talked about this, but the idea of a guitar competition or any kind of competition is pretty horrifying to me personally. Just like the experience of it. So I'm so curious to hear all about your experience and everything. But do you find? I mean, I'll just start from the beginning. Do you find you're able to enjoy the whole experience regardless of the result?
I have gotten to the point where I can do that now. I think, there have been times where, so if we rewind a little bit, I jumped back into the contest scene like 3 years ago. This is my 3rd year in a row of like doing contests again ever since I think I had taken like a 18-year break, something like that. And the first year I had no expectations, and that's the year that I won second at Winfield. you know, and, and was like, whoa, this is pretty fun, like that's awesome. This is the guitar, in fact. Um,
Oh, killer!
yeah, so that was just kind of like mind blowing to me. And the next year I went back to Winfield and I had expectations and I did worse, and
Wow.
I don't even mean that my expectations like made me play worse or that like, somehow that affected how I was judged. I think just my entire mindset for the year was like the voice was a little too loud that was telling me that I needed to do something to win this thing. You know what I mean? Whereas that first year, I was meditating every day. I was focusing on one note at a time in my arrangements, executing, just like playing good music. So year three, we're in year three right now. I've gotten back, I think, a little bit to that, like, let's just play the music and see what happens kind of
Hmm.
thing. And Rocky Grass was infinitely more pleasurable as a result of me adopting that mentality this past year. Because then it was like a lower pressure in terms of the interpersonal thing or the just the kind of structure of the contest and kind of like, you know like we're talking about like caring about winning and all that stuff. What does that even mean? It's so subjective how these things are judged anyways that like I don't think you can place too much uh, on yourself in terms of like not being able to win one of these contests because at the end of the day, really, there are a lot of good players that show up to these things, and it kind of could be any player's contest depending on what the judges want to hear. And I mean, and I beefed up one of my arrangements at Rocky Grass, so I can't complain about not winning. You know what I mean? Because it I didn't perform as well as I could have, but it was all lighthearted, man. Backstage, there were a lot of great players there. A guy named Forrest Thurman won. He
Hmm.
was Arizona State champion last year. Great dude, great picker. We had a blast, like getting to know each other and chatting backstage. So, yeah, I feel like at Rocky Grass this year, as a result of that kind of 3 year cycle that I just talked about, was kind of a way more pleasurable experience than it could have been like Winfield for me last year.
Yeah, yeah, that's so interesting. It feels like, I'm sure everyone's had that experience when you're just getting started with something. You're kind of, yeah, again, no expectations, and maybe it's just fun to be involved. So there's kind of a magic to that, right?
Yeah.
Um, you know, uh, 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 when people say like beginner's luck, I bet that's what that really means. Is not luck. It's just, you're not in your own way yet. And I feel like, yeah, I feel like there's tons of stuff like that that we're spending a lot of our time trying to get back to that kind of beginner's mindset, not just to have skill, doing the thing you're doing, but like your experience being present or enjoying it. And certainly.
Absolutely. I think that I like that you kind of flip that into beginner's mindset because that reminds me of some of the like Josh Turknet kind of materials, the
Hmm.
Brain Joe thing. And
Yeah.
I think that those two things are like directly related. Beginner's mindset, having more curiosity about the situation, taking more pleasure in like the smaller things. Like I am so happy. You'll love this. I was having kind of a bit of an adrenal response in both rounds of the contest at Rockygrass. So it's not to say that I didn't get nervous. I was still having a
Hmm.
good time, but like when you get in front of a crowd of people and they're like, "You're being judged right now," your body's like, "Oh," you know. um,
Yep.
and I was having this adrenal response. I could feel some shakes coming in and stuff like that, but I stuck with every breath. I stuck with every note. You know what I mean? And I was able to kind of play through the arrangements. I was able to get all the notes out, at least in the first round. Um, so I think there's something important about that beginner's mindset thing, you know?
Hmm. Yeah. That's really interesting. It's funny you mentioned too, all the different, uh, ways you can look at what it means to win something like that, and this is not the last time certainly we're going to be talking about contests. Folks may be aware that there's a documentary being produced called Winfield, of which Hayes is one of the main focuses as he prepares to compete again in the Winfield National Guitar Competition. So this is going to be a recurring theme for a little while, at least for us.
Sorry.
Yeah. um, but when I found out you guys were doing that documentary, it got me curious because I'm really outside the competition world. I've been aware of it, but like, uh, I don't know what the rules are. I don't know who wins these things. I don't generally, it doesn't come across my desk per se. But I got curious and I started looking into it, and it's so fascinating. If you go look, especially go look at Winfield, the past winners, you'll see a lot of names that you recognize, not usually as the winners. I saw way more people I recognized in second and third place than I did in first, which is not to say I don't know what it means. It means I go check out so and so that won and say, oh, it turns out there's this really great player I've never heard of. But you know, go look at it for the last 20 years or however many, whenever it was that Kenny Smith was regularly doing it.
I was
How
hoping
many
you would
times?
say.
How many times Kenny Smith did not win Winfield? And you kind of think about it, it's like, huh, that's interesting. He's one of my favorite flat pickers of all time, kind of objectively one of the most like accomplished, skilled, creative, unique players. And so like, what is this world in which that isn't enough, or whatever? Who knows? Who knows what the situation is? I'm sure you have some context to that. But I remember even Noam Pikelny talking about this, that he would do banjo contests now and again when he was younger, and didn't win them. He, again, to me, objectively one of the most skilled, creative, and unique players. Nobody can do what he does, uh, but that's not enough. Or in the moment, whatever you need didn't happen. Somebody else was able to do the thing you needed to do. So I find that really fascinating that it's not like we were talking about in the award show thing in the last episode. It's like it doesn't really mean it's not just a popularity contest necessarily, right? It's not just like, well, this person is the best in my mind, so they are the winner. It's what's happening right now. What's the I guess what's today look like for this person, and that's really what it's judged on, right? So that's the pressure. But I wonder if you have any more context to what it means for all these heroes of ours to almost win. you know
Yeah. I think it's everything you talked about there. I like the fact that you brought up the kind of immediacy of it because I think whoever shows up that day and whatever is being played that day, it's so. That's why I guess I have this opinion that it's so subjective. I've seen enough of these things in my life that, like, I've seen Alan Shadd lose contests. You know what I mean? Like we're talking
hmm
three-time national champion, Alan Shadd. I've seen him go to contests and not come out on top. Um, so I think it has a lot to do with your mindset that day, your state of mind. uh the weather matters. I know that sounds ridiculous, but like,
Totally.
is it really hot outside? If so, are your hands sweating? Are you like, sticking to your guitar? If so, like all of that's kind of affected. Um, so there are all those kind of like environmental factors, but I think another angle that I look at it too, Eric Harden, the year that I took second at Winfield in 2024, Eric Harden won, and he and I have been running into each other at contests since we were kids, like teenagers. Um, Eric, I saw him. What the one of the years that I went to Winfield early on was the year that Brian McDowell won guitar, mandolin, and fiddle all in the same year, right?
Yeah.
And his kind of like posse that year was Brandon Davis and Eric Harden. Those two
Mm.
guys they were the top three in the contest that year. So like Eric has been performing at a high level. I've seen him win Wayne Henderson's contest multiple times. I don't know if he placed second or third that year with Brian, but he was top three. Um, so I guess what I'm driving at is like you could be one of the best, most active players in the scene, and it could take you 15 years to win that
Mm.
contest just to get the right kind of alignment of all those variables that we talked about before. So I think a lot of it has to do with just like coming back, keeping after it.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
Kenny Smith didn't win first place ever at Winfield because in that time he became a famous bluegrass guitar player and had a career. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So and like David Greer is on that
Hmm.
list. You know what I mean? There's like all these other names of, like you said, people that we see actively on the scene who are, I think most people would agree with us that they are known as professional musicians, not contest guitar players, right?
Hmm.
Um, so I think there's kind of some of that factor to it too. Like how many years is that person willing to commit to going to this thing and trying to get the win?
Yeah. That's really, I love that that the bigger picture could be that it's this community of people who decide we're going to keep showing up and trying to do this really difficult thing. And part of the reason there's stakes is because we're competing and we're being judged. So it's not meaningless. There's some attached meaning. So you kind of, right. It can make you nervous. It can make you, whatever it is. So it puts a challenge, right? Right. But I love that could be the bigger picture, because I think the most cynical version of my take on both awards and competition, just any type of competition, or you know recognition, whatever it is. My most cynical take on that is often, well, the awards don't necessarily mean anything. The competition isn't necessarily music. It's not the way that I like to play music with people. It kind of could be a slippery slope to kind of this toxic view of there's a lot of, you could go down that road for a long time and really be kind of entrenched in that. And there have been times when I kind of have felt that way, but I think it is feeling more now like a misunderstanding of what the community, the contest community could be. I'm sure there's plenty of that, kind of negative stuff. I'm
There are
sure that
people that
exists.
treat it that way.
Sure.
Definitely.
But I love the idea that I'm sure there's lots of people that, and it sounds like what you're describing when you show up to these things is you want to win because that's what you're there to do, right? You don't want to, again, you can't remove the meaning, otherwise why show up, right? There
Yeah.
has to be a little bit of that meaning of I'm trying to do the best I can and win, but that's the conceit. That's why you all show up. And then what you get is you're surrounded by this community of people who've been working on things really hard, and you're all kind of sharing that with each other. And it sounds like among the people you're friends with, or among the people that are kind of big names in the contest world, are really supportive of each other. That's not, doesn't sound like too cutthroat a situation. The big names that I know in that world are always commenting, so and so did a great job, or whatever thing it is, right? So in every way that a sport is this made up game that we're playing and attaching meaning to, there's kind of this beautiful ideal, it sounds like, where it's it's a community kind of like, hey, here's what I've been working on, check this out, what do you all think, and I can really appreciate that, and that in that way I can start to approach it, as as bigger than the worst version of it in my mind, right? That I kind of have without the context. So I'm actually really excited to learn more about that world because um, it it's always scared me to do something like that, right? Like I wouldn't say I have stage fright per se in a performance context, because I'm able to remove the competition from my mind if I'm just on stage with a band. That doesn't feel like I'm competing with someone necessarily, although
Yeah.
sometimes I can get nervous like that. But the idea of being specifically judged, I just know would be a minefield for me psychologically.
Well, that puts us both in the same category, my
Right?
friend.
Yeah, yeah. You're willing to confront it, and I haven't yet. So.
Yeah. What's so funny is like I wish I could like, I wish I could put all of you guys in the like, being John Malkovich version of this and like just be inside my head while I'm doing this thing. Because 5 seconds before I walk up to hit the stage, I'm cool as a cucumber. I've just played my arrangements. Everything's fine. Everything feels good. It's like as soon as my foot hits the stairs to walk up onto that thing, my body, like, my body's like, it's go time. And then, the adrenaline starts pumping and there's that kind of extra handicap that comes up. You know what
Mm,
I mean? This like
yeah.
tension or whatever, adrenal response. I just call it because it's everything associated with that. But what's funny is at Rockygrass, Forrest and I were joking backstage because we both felt that. It's not like we
Mm,
were getting inside each other's heads or like messing with each other during the we didn't need to do that because our bodies are good enough at doing that there on their own. So we're just goofing the whole time, backstage. We're like chatting about stuff and like you said, building community and you know, Steve Kaufman and Alan Shad have been like two of my greatest supporters in all of this. Like just like you said, encouraging words, um, critical feedback when I need it, but never in like a mean way. You know what I mean? Um, Roy Curry came up to me in the bullpen at Winfield last year and was like, "Hey, I've heard your stuff before. Like I love it. I just wanted to say that, like shake your hand and say like, keep after it, man. And I'm like, holy crap. Like Roy Curry, one of the guys that I've been watching crush this contest since I was a teenager is just like a nice guy and I think he enjoys that community. He's seen what he's gotten out of it. And, he's trying to like bring people into the fold and stuff. So there is that other side to the
mhm.
contest, that I think a lot of us, um, don't quite think about. It's easy to think about the competition thing in music as a negative because music is an artistic expressive form and is it maybe the best way to think about music all the time like competitions? No, but when you set up a competition it does what you just said. It helps people like, well, this is a contest, I need to come out swinging with my best stuff, so I'm going to like sit down and like, how can I take all of my best stuff and write a really cool arrangement of a tune, 3 passes, 4 passes through a tune, because that's typically what you have time for.
Mm.
So that's a challenge, right? You know this from a music perspective. Like I have to come up with 3 rounds through a common fiddle tune that take you on a journey, you know, and show you that one, I'm really good at this instrument, and two, that I've got some like tricks that can keep you as the listener like hooked in and kind of listening the whole time. So I think it's a really cool, like fun etude in that way. And then to see how does my version of that stack up against Forrest Thurman or Eric Harden or Luke Lovejoy or any of these guys that are winning the contest. So yeah, I know that there's like kind of two sides of how people view this thing, but I'm squarely on the positive side. I've gotten so much out of the community and just the act of doing these things that I was talking about inside of my arrangements that yeah, I'm probably going to keep doing this for a while.
That's so cool. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I love. It's interesting. We talk about competition as being, in this world, like who's the best, who did the best
Y-
today, whatever the thing is, right? It's on its face, sure, that's what it is who did the best job. But I think I actually think it's interesting that it's kind of removed from the professional touring scene in a way. There's some overlap, obviously,
Mhm.
but it doesn't. They're not so connected that that winning at Winfield is directly related to your commercial success success as a recording artist or anything like that. If it's connected at all, some people don't do anything professionally outside of competitions, right? And in a way, that's actually really cool because one of the challenges I find with, like the IBMA awards sometimes is there's an implication that this is someone who is the best, or this is someone who is whatever it means to win the award, right? But then there's the real life implications of commercial success from getting the award. You get the award and then you get opportunities from there. So the competition is kind of this psychological thing, but it's also like literally competing for resources. There's people
Yes.
literally competing for, I want to get a record deal. I want to get booked. I want to get, whatever this thing is, like you're literally competing for the limited amount of resources in the genre. So that competition, I've seen that get a lot more negative in the professional world, either with the awards or just competitive with the people that you're, touring parallel to, do these
Yep.
festivals and whatever it is, like trying to get a slot. So in a way, removing it from that, I mean, I know you win money or guitars, and there are people that do so many competitions that they're kind of making a decent amount of money. Certainly that's a thing, but it's not the same world of competing for like survival in the industry. So in that way, it actually like declaws the competition in a way that I find the competition in the real world sad, because it's like, we all want to do as well as we can. It's just hard that no, we can't all have the same gigs and the same opportunities. And it's more complicated, but it seems like in the contest world, it's way easier for that to be good natured because it isn't, if you don't win this contest, then you're not going to, you can just sign up for another one. You can just keep signing up and you can keep showing up. And that's the whole experience. You're not barred from any part of the experience because of how it goes 1 year. Right.
Exactly. The
Yeah.
next year is the chance for redemption. You know what I mean? Which
Yeah.
is maybe like part of the cool thing about it and why I keep going back. It's like, oh man, I didn't get it last year, but it's like I seriously, I love the week after I get home from Winfield is one of the best weeks of the year because I can like really, it's like that transition period where it's like, okay, what did I do last week? And like, how am I going to use that information to steer the next, 365 days? You know what I mean? So I think, yeah, it's much more positive in that way. And I'm in touch with all the contest guys throughout the year. Like we're talking to each other, we're goofing, we're sending each other messages and stuff. And I can't say that when I was active in like the IBMA scene as like a touring band, we weren't talking about the fallout of the IBMA awards and all that kind of stuff in the same way that I talk to people about Winfield. It's like you said, it's like in that way, it's like a competition for real world resources. It's like it's
Hmm.
a much different thing that can get more negative, if
Yeah.
you choose to engage with it that way. Whereas I still think that like I guess something that you said is like stirring some thoughts in my mind that like the industry awards are actually like, you know, I'm carving out more space for myself in this world and I'm trying to occupy more space. I'm trying to take more resources. I'm trying to
Hmm.
become more high profile and like, um make that impression upon the scene. Whereas like Winfield, who won Winfield 4 years ago, Eli?
I could not possibly tell you.
Right. So it's
Yeah.
like it's almost more like this like bragging rights kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like the winners, and this is almost, we talk about this in the documentary, like when they're interviewing me and stuff, but like winning Winfield is more than just like me saying I'm better than all the other guitar players that showed up that day. Like I think anyone who knows me would know that that's like a sickening thought in my brain to even think.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's
Hmm.
not even true. Winning Winfield is more about, can I do all the stuff that I just said? Can I show up? Can I be in a mindful state? Can I like use my meditative practice to guide me throughout the year to be calm enough and collected enough to show up at this thing, play the arrangements in a way that I feel happy about, in a musical way, and then maybe get the number one title out of it, you know?
Hmm.
Like, but all of those steps have to happen before you get the number one title, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You have to be mindful. You have to stick with every note. You have to like make the music happen. And if you're, in my opinion, if you're not focused on the act of playing the music, if you're not focused on the actual guitar side of things, then the number one thing will never happen, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Interesting. Well, and just by the rules. So I guess actually now I'm curious about the rules are because I have a hunch about something, but I actually don't know. So you said 3 or 4 passes around a tune, or there's like each round. I'm sure you play one tune or
Two tunes per
two
round.
tunes.
Yep.
And is there a rule against improvisation, or is it so you could improvise? I guess I will say from what I've watched, it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of improvisation going, and it also seems like it might not be super helpful. You'd have to be improvising on a level truly to the point where it appears to be a because everything that I'm hearing when I watch these videos of people competing, it's like these are really fleshed out, well thought out, intricate, not always complex, I guess, but not these are not just like, wow, this person is really great playing over Salt Creek. This is you're like you said before, you're there's kind of a narrative. You're telling a story. You're going somewhere with this. So you can improvise. It sounds like, but it doesn't seem like that's super common.
I don't think so. And I think largely because of what we were talking about with like the mind game, right? Like for me, the times where I'm improvising best are the times where I'm like in the flow state. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like everything is out of the way. I'm like, like my mind is clear and I'm just completely plugged in to the music. And I'm sure you've hit these spots. It's like where the musical material is being generated in your brain and comes out to your fingers immediately. And I know that
Hmm.
that sounds weird for people. You're like, well, isn't that what always happens? And it's like, well, sometimes your brain is like, well, we could put our fingers over that pattern that we've played a million times that I saw. You know what I mean? Like, which is
Yeah.
not the same as like hearing a passage of music in your head and letting it come to the fingers. And I think Winfield, because of the stress of it, it's so hard that if you were to rely on that mechanism, the mind like could get in the way of that very easily. If you show up that day and there's no gas in the tank from an improvisational standpoint, like there's your arrangement. You're dead, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you show up with like a rough sketch of, you know, three kind of versions of Forked Deer that you're going to play through, then I think you stand a much better chance. And the reason I framed it that way, like Luke Lovejoy, Eric Harden, those guys, those two specifically, I know incorporate improvisational elements into their arrangements, so they don't play them the
Okay.
same way every time. I would
Yeah.
say that like Eric specifically, I know has like a pretty like a solid framework, like 75 to 80% of that thing just like really dialed in, and then 20%, is variable. Luke, I think, improvised like the year that he won. I think he improvised all of it, which is insane.
Wow.
You
Okay.
know,
Okay. Yes. So
Carl
there is some
Miner
precedent.
last year improvised all of it, which is insane. Carl, you're insane, man. What's up with that? But you look at a guy like Carl Miner, and I'm like, to me, it's like he's been training for this day his whole life because he started as a great contest guitar player, right? Like I've known about Carl since I was first getting into this scene. He's really good at the contest thing. And I know he arranges stuff, he has in the past like really dialed in note for note arrangements. But these days, for the last 20 years, he's been like an in-demand studio musician in Nashville. So it's like he's got this ability to kind of like show up to a gig, hear what the parameters are, and then just like crush it, come up with something. I heard him backstage before the final round last year, like writing the tunes that he was going to play, in the next 5 minutes. I'm just like, oh man,
Yeah.
like
Oh my. Yeah. I mean,
been
talk
working for a
about
year and
just
a
like
half on this.
yeah. Talk about he's under pressure consistently at a level that I've never experienced. Just in the studio, time is money. You gotta play something right away. That is whatever it is. It's like he's been practicing for that exact scenario.
Yeah.
That's really fascinating. I love that. I mean, so it sounds like, yeah, it sounds like there is an element of improvisation at a certain level or a certain type of player. Um, it's interesting to think, you know, when you're talking about what it would mean to win is not, is not about being the best or not feeling like you're the best or having these kind of bragging rights of, there's some amount of that, but not bragging rights like now I can tell all of these people how much better I am. Then obviously that's not what we're after. Um, but I like the idea that it's a kind of a measure, and partially this is something you can probably perceive in yourself as you're doing it. Like you can tell how successful you've been, but it's a little bit of measure of your ability to operate at the level that you think you're able to, which means everything has to be in place. It's not just that you have the best arrangement necessarily. Um, it sounds like it's as much, if not more, the preparation, and then the day of, can you kind of keep a cool head about it? Can you stay mindful? Can you, all these things? And so if you were to win, it would really be a measure of like, wow, that day I was able to rise to the occasion in a really, otherwise tense environment, right? Whatever, which that's the challenge of it, right? If it really were just like who's just the best all the time, then it wouldn't. I don't know. It feels like that wouldn't really mean a whole lot because like, well, yeah, they're the best all year long. Then if it's just we look at everything and we just say who do we like the most, then that doesn't really mean a whole lot. But if it has to be that day, then that really could be anyone because so many different variables and factors. Anybody could rise to the occasion in that way. Which again, it's like, hey, this is really tearing down my preconceived thoughts on this sort of thing. What it doesn't change is how I would feel doing it to start out. I think what I'm realizing is this mountain of resistance that I have to participating in something like that doesn't really come from a ideological disagreement with the existence of competition, which I have my feelings about competition, but how I would feel, how hard that would be for me, is not related to that. It's actually just that I'd be really nervous.
Yeah.
Just the very simple fact of like, well, what if I mess up, and what if I don't like what I play, and what if that means that then the judges don't like me, and what if everyone laughs at me? It's like all the classic things. I know that the stakes are actually in reality extremely low. Like worst case scenario, I trip on the stairs and hit my head, right? Like that's the true worst case scenario is something outside of the competition. The competition,
Yes.
no part of that could be the worst case scenario, but the experience of it. I mean, now I'm kind of curious. It feels a little bit masochistic to say this, but like maybe I need to like jump into what is the equivalent of my nightmare, and try it at some point. That might be a couple years down the road, but it is an interesting idea, certainly.
Well, buddy, there's a car from Columbus, Ohio that's always headed out west every September. So if you ever want to link up, just let me
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. Or how many people are competing at a level that's like, well, they just want to participate. There's no chance that they're, are people on
I-
the more beginner end of the spectrum, just as it's a fun thing to participate in? Is there that level?
yeah, for sure. So, at Rockygrass, I even saw this past weekend. There was a guy that I had taught at Blue Ridge Guitar Camp.
Mm.
Wally was his name, and he was like, "Hey, man, I saw that there was an open spot in the competition. I've been working up just some tunes. Like he had been playing. I think he was pretty new to like fiddle tune playing, and had worked on some tunes recently. So he was like, I'm just going to get up there so I can play them in front of people. I'm going to see what. And I think he knew that to some degree, this thing was about like kind of riding the line with your adrenal kind of
Yeah.
response in the moment, and like being able to play your tunes, and I thought that was inspiring as heck, man. I love that. And I would say the same thing happens at Winfield every year. I would say
Mm.
that there's like half of the field that shows up is in that category, you know, and
Yeah.
they cap the number of contestants at Winfield to 40, and usually it's like 30 to 35 people will show up. So there's like 15, 16, 17 people that are there, like I think purely to just get up on stage and play through everything we've been talking about. You know,
Yeah.
can I show up this day and play the tunes in my way, not get in my way with like my kind of physiological response to the situation and stuff like that. it's like a test of your mettle kind of thing, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
Um, and I would say, yeah, I would say at least half of the people are in that category. Um, Somebody asked me this question this past weekend too, like how many people at the Rockygrass competition were like there to win, or like the like
Hmm.
top players. I would say that there was, by my count, there were five that I was like, these guys clearly have played contests before. They've got the right style of arrangements to impress the judges, all that kind of stuff. So like there, it was like half of the field, because 12 is what they cap Rockygrass at. It's a
Yeah, yeah,
much
yeah.
smaller contest. Um, but I would say the ratio is a little lower that way at Winfield. It's like out of those 35 guys, there's probably six, seven, eight, nine, maybe 10, that are like that could be any player's game out of that pool of guys.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's so fascinating. Oh, that's interesting. I think I like that for the people who are participating at a level that is for the experience or for what you're describing, right? To kind of put yourself through that kind of trial. I like that it sounds like in that way you're as much a part of that community as whoever's winning. Like there's uh i- again in the real professional touring world, if that's the real world of kind of competition, right? It's not that by definition there's good bands and bad bands and they don't mix and whatever, but like there's definitely a world where how many times have we played at festivals where it's a big festival, and that means that you go to your green room and they say this is your green room, and you see all the other bands, you say okay, this is where we are, and you realize that the headliner has their own green room, right? And you're not allowed to go to that green room, right? Whatever the thing is, you can tell pretty quickly professionally, like okay, I'm at a certain level and this is what I'm worth, financially to this festival, this gig or something. And so that's a very real thing, right? And so I'm sure we've been on both sides of that, of being, um, you don't get a green room, or you're in the band that is the headliner, whatever.
Yep.
And so, yeah, we're in the same community as the band that plays at 10 a.m., as the one that plays the closing slot, right? We're in the same community, certainly, but there is more of a tendency that is, um, it's not necessarily all access. It's not that you can just go up to anybody necessarily and say, "Hey, we're basically colleagues," because you may not be, in a sense. Like I don't walk up to Bela
Exactly.
Fleck and just kind of talk about our professional lives on a one-to-one. That's not how that works. Um, Unless you happen to be personally really good friends with Bela Fleck, right? Which I'm not. So,
Yeah.
um,
Bela, call us.
exactly. Bela, what's the deal? Yeah. But it seems like in the competition world, like the membership in that community is the showing up in that way, where it's like you may not have any plans to win, but there's kind of it seems like there's a reciprocal respect for just participating in that way. Just anyone who's willing to try that is on that fundamental level of like, you know, whatever kind of courage that takes, to
You
make that
know,
choice.
I've never thought about it so much in those terms, like you just said, but that's absolutely true. Like when I showed up to Winfield the first time, I think I was a sophomore in college. That would have been 2007 or something like that. Um, and at the time, I had a professor at college who was friends with Alan Shadd, and he was like, "My buddy Alan's going to be out there. He's one of the major players, but like, don't be scared by that because he'll show you around." So
Yeah.
I got out there. I like contacted Alan Shadd. He like literally showed me around. He was like, "This is where Steve Kaufman and all the folks camp, and like this is where the good jams are, and all here's a group of guys. You might be able to find a rhythm player out of one of them." And I oddly enough, Alan backed me up in the contest that year. There's a picture of
Nice.
me playing my crappy version of Old Joe Clark with Alan Shadd in the rhythm player seat, which is like one of my favorite pictures of all time. Thank you, Alan, for doing that. Um, so yeah, like I felt it. Even Allen, who's one of the top guys at that time, I think he was two-time winner. He hadn't won his third one yet, but immediately welcomed me in because it's like this kid's got the medal to like at least show up to this thing. He drove 1,000 miles to to show up
Yeah.
to this thing and get up on stage like the rest of us. and I made some of my greatest friends in the scene doing that. So I think everything you said is totally true that way. So, thanks to Alan Shadd, Robert Schaefer, the Kessingers, Matt Lindsay, all of those guys early on were the ones that like I had no idea who they were. They had no idea who I was, but I showed up and just started asking them questions and hanging around, and they like brought me in like it was family. So, yeah, everything you said, I think, is totally true about that scene.
Cool. That's amazing. All right. So now this episode is just going to be me interviewing you about Rockygrass and Winfield, I guess, unless we want to go somewhere else. But I'm curious. So what you were actually playing? Are you for how many contests are you doing this year? I mean, you did Rockygrass. You're going to do Winfield. What else have you done or are doing?
That's it. Unfortunately, where we sit in this like place in time, hopefully those of you that are listening to this podcast 50 years from now, the landscape is much different. But there are like 4 or 5 contests that are kind of like worth going to every season, and they're all spread out across the entire continental United States. So it's impossible, unless you've just got infinite time and resources to kind of devote to it, it's impossible to get to all of them. The ones that I know still exist. Robin Kessinger runs one for the West Virginia state competition. Texas still has their state competition. Arizona, Kentucky still does a state competition. Rockygrass. Trying to think. Oh, is there one up in? I think it's either Wisconsin or Minnesota. Minnesota,
Hmm.
I think, actually has a
Yeah.
state competition that's still going. So there's like 5 or 6 kind of like smaller or regional ones that still kind of exist, and then Winfield, the big show. I think everyone
That's the
still kind
one.
of
Yeah.
sees it that way, you know.
Yeah.
Back in
Yeah.
the day, it was kind of like there was like a triple crown, in my opinion. There was like the road to Winfield, which was Merlefest, Rockygrass, and then Winfield.
Mm.
But Merlefest doesn't have the competition anymore, which is a bit of a shame. Um, and yeah, so Rockygrass, I think, is kind of like the one that you do, to kind of prep for Winfield. Either that or one of the state competitions. But
Yeah. So did you
yeah,
play the same tunes? Like, are these the arrangements in your set?
yep,
This is basically in a way a rehearsal for the big show.
100%. Yeah. So
Yeah.
anyone that was at Rockygrass saw what I'm going to play at Winfield. They saw a crappier version, hopefully, of what I'm going to play at Winfield.
Sure. Well, you were kind of sandbagging. You were kind of like you don't want to you want to let
Yeah.
anybody know what they're in
No.
for at Winfield.
Yeah,
So
I threw the ending on that second round tune just to kind of leave it for Winfield.
yeah, exactly. Oh, that's great. Do you find practicing for this stuff? I mean, I'm sure there's a difference in how you practice it because in your professional life, if you're on a gig, you're more likely to be improvising a lot more, or
Hmm.
you're not playing a tune 4 times in a row as your performance necessarily. You're not
Yeah,
that you don't have the Hayes solo show that often, as far as I
not
know.
quite yet.
Yeah. So I'm sure there are kind of technical benefits to practicing stuff that lends itself to other things that you do. But how do you structure practice for this sort of thing?
Yeah, I think I liken it to more of the techniques that I was taught to use from like my classical music curriculum in
Hmm.
college. I think because it is like a set piece of music, right? Well, if I go straight back to the beginning, it's almost like you have to be a composer first.
Mm.
You have to come up with an arrangement. You know what I mean? So like if we're talking about, that's a totally different part of the process, but like that took me 6 months, 1 year just to come up with my 4 arrangements, just like every day sitting down, and I wrote them out in my notation software just to kind of
Mm.
like have the idea there. I would usually start with something that I heard recorded in a voice memo, and then like whenever I got back to my notation software, I would document it just to kind of have a thing. Um, so that was like the first part of the process, was getting that stuff out, and that was like 6 months. So that's kind of like I said, a related but totally separate process from the practice of it. Then once the pieces are set, my practice usually ends up being like a I love to do this thing where I wake up in the morning, I drink my first cup of coffee, and then I come to the practice room and cold play my arrangements.
Wow. Okay. So like full speed, like this might be my. That's really interesting. Okay. Is that to kind
And
of simulate the feeling of all those things that come up in a performance space? Yeah.
yeah, it's like my muscles feel crunchy right now. My brain is a little foggy because I just woke up. I've got a little bit of caffeine, but I just want to see, like, under the worst conditions, what can my body do with this
Hmm.
arrangement? Um, and then if I notice that there was something like glaringly wrong with what I did after one of those, I'll usually play through all four as if I'm on stage. I'll treat it like I'm, like no stopping, all that kind of stuff. And then I'll maybe for a half hour just run sections after
Mm.
that. So it's like, what were the difficult sections here or transitions between sections, and how can I maybe clean those up? And this is, that process is 80% about just being able to like technically execute the things that I've come up with for myself. But then 20%, that's an opportunity for me. And I've done this multiple times over the last 4 years to just tweak a section. It's like, you know what? I keep hitting this one wrong. I think there's actually something a little easier technically that I could do here to fill that space and
Mm.
give myself a better chance of executing that to actually make it to the real flashy thing that I want to highlight later, you know?
Right. The thing that, yeah, the thing you're going to do successfully is going to sound better than the whatever might be the better idea, I guess. That you,
Exactly.
if you're not going to hit it, it'd be better if you played what if just
Exactly.
yeah, yeah.
If I'm not going to hit it, it's a terrible idea, right?
Exactly. Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
yeah, Jake Workman might be able to grab that idea, but like just because I wrote it on the paper doesn't mean that I should be able to execute it, right? And I think that that
Right.
word should is kind of I hate that word in general. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? I think like what is should? What should we be doing? We're all like different, you know what I mean? So like I try to not be too married to anything that I compose that way.
Yeah.
Because in the practice room is where that organic uh kind of like ability will start to show up. It's like, what can I actually do? Even though I heard this in my head and saw this on the paper, what can my hands actually accomplish on this guitar? Um, so I'll do a half hour to an hour of that every day. I'll play the arrangements, and then it's like half hour to 45 minutes or whatever of just kind of nitpicking on them. It's like, okay, my triplets were a little rough on that one section. So just, can I get that section like really, really nice or something like that? And then at the end of that, I play them all again.
Okay. Yeah.
Just kind of like after I've workshopped them, after I'm warmed up now and I feel a little more comfortable, how do they sound? Because that's actually what's probably going to happen on the day of the contest. I will have gotten up, I will have done everything that I just did. I'll play the arrangements, I'll nitpick a little bit, and then I'll play them again. So I'll be nice and warmed up. So it's almost like I'm trying to replicate the process of what I'm going to do that day at the contest
Mm.
that morning. Um, and I don't know if this is the right approach or not. If you're a psychologist or something out there, tell me if I'm on the right track. But I just feel like the more that I can replicate a routine that I am likely to uh, do at the contest itself, like if I can do that every day in some kind of like contained fashion, then that puts me in a more comfortable mindset the day of the competition.
Mhm. That's really fascinating. When you are thinking about a warm up, you're doing what you just described, and then how much are you, like what's your headspace like, or I guess physically, what are you doing like in the 10 minutes before you walk up? Are you actually playing at that point, or are you specifically not playing? Because I feel like my experience has only been on stage in this sort of situation, where like the varying levels of pressure. And I've gone through periods where I had a long warm up routine, or this is what I need to do to get ready to be able to play whatever the set list is on stage. And it could be this long list of things, including what I'm eating, meditation, warm up on my instrument, all this stuff. And I have also gone through phases where I would do absolutely nothing. I would not put any thought into, if you've played the same set over and over again, I said, what happens if I just completely wing it, right? The first time I take the instrument out of the case is for sound check, then it goes back in the case, and then walk on stage and you just play. And there was a mindset that was, uh, yeah, whatever. I'm just gonna throw it out there. And sometimes it would be the best version of the experience, just saying, "This is what I got," and I'm not going to overthink it, right? So that middle ground between really prepared and no preparation was where I think I always got stuck. Was do a little bit of warm up, but really just enough to get myself nervous, right? Just warm up enough to realize how not warmed up I am, and then go on stage
Exactly.
nervous. So sometimes I try to figure out, okay, I want to be physically ready, which involves stretching and warming up, right? Technically, but it's always that last like 20, 30 minutes or 10 or 20 minutes, whatever it is, where, okay, am I letting my hands get cold? Or if I'm playing, am I just kind of overthinking it? So what does that look like for you? Like right before going on, how much of that is playing or
Yeah.
not?
Right before going on, if we're talking about 30 to 45 minutes before going on stage, I am not playing. I am trying not to
Mm,
play.
okay.
Um, and I think because if we go back to like that practice routine that I've got every day, I've gotten up every day, and no joke, man, at this point when I wake up, I can usually play through my arrangements in a way that I'm happy with cold.
Great. Cool.
So like to me that says like logically in the back of my mind that like if I let my hands get a little cold in that hour before the contest, it's not going to be the end of the world. And really, the thing I need to be focusing on during that last half hour, 45 minutes is breathing, because I know the thing that's going to get me. And this is like, just like data I've collected from playing these contests the last 3 years. If there is one thing that's going to get me for the contest, it's going to be my ability to control the adrenaline right before I go on stage. So that's why I commit the last 45 minutes to a half hour to almost just like a full on meditation. Um, I usually try to like get away from where the contest is, or like go off to the side somewhere and just kind of be alone. And usually when you're a guy sitting there with his eyes closed and in kind of a prostrate kind of position or whatever, people aren't that inclined to come up and mess with you unless they're just jerks. And even in that instance, I love the opportunity to practice meditation while dealing with like some sort of external factor like that. Um, so yeah, 45 minutes, half hour leading up to the contest, I am not playing. I am exclusively breathing. I'm just trying to center in on that whole thing. One thing that I will do though, about 20 minutes before, half hour to 20 minutes before I go on stage, is in my mind, and you'll love this, visualize every arrangement note for note from the beginning to the end. So it's
Wow. Yeah.
like, can I start that arrangement in my mind and follow it completely through in my mind? Can I
Mm,
hear, my Blackberry rag note for note, all the way to the end? And I think that's been a bigger that practice, and I do that during my meditations at home sometimes too, but that practice has been invaluable, man. Like that's just the ability to kind of cultivate awareness and cultivate your ability to choose to stay with something or choose to place your mind somewhere, as opposed to your mind being taken somewhere by
mm,
an external factor, right? Like, to me, that was the whole game of meditation when I started getting into it anyways. Once I realized that it was a practice to regain control of your mind, that's become the most powerful thing that I use before the contest in that kind of dead time. So yeah, I know that was a long-winded answer, but the
that's great.
yeah, the hour leading up to the contest is about visualization, centering myself, getting out of the you know, the kind of, like you were saying, that jittery practice mode where it's like I'm gonna warm up enough just to freak myself out to be like, oh, my hands aren't
Yep.
good. What am I gonna do?
Yep.
Um, and cultivate a good mindset.
That's really fascinating. Yeah, I've been noticing, just thinking back of my experience, like college auditions or performances that were big enough that it I got nervous, or at a certain point when I was nervous for all performances, or even now when I record these practice logs, I try to start each one playing something, and I'm trying not to over prepare for them. I mean, I try to do some improvising, right? But I can still sense when I'm a little bit tense or I'm a little bit nervous. I'm like, am I going to get to the end of this tune? Do I have to do this all over again? Whatever it is. And I've been trying to parse like what's the best way to prepare for that that feels um, not like doing an hour's worth of takes just so I can get to the start of this video, right? Um, and in you describing that being, first of all, practicing the same way every time, we're warming up at the same way every time, so that you have that same experience that day, getting yourself physically prepared, and then it's almost as if you do all that warming up, and then you still have the benefit of, again, it doesn't sound like you're winging it. This is you're mentally, you're putting a lot of effort into, um, putting your mind where you want it to be for this experience, but you kind of still get get the benefit uh, of going in cold, which sounds counterintuitive, but it actually, in some ways, like when I was describing doing that on stage, I think the benefit of that was the only thing I could have on my mind is just, well, this is what I'm supposed to play right now. This is what it's not, how do my hands feel? Am I ready to do this? Well, it's not the questions. It's just the thing, right? So it seems like actually you're doing a little bit of both in a cool way. You're getting the best of both worlds because you are physically prepared. That was, my misstep was, roll out of bed in the hotel and go to the gig, and it's like, okay, mindset, great in a way. There was a very single pointed thing physically. It's like, okay, let's not play something too fast to start with because actually I'm not warmed up. But I like that combination of things. I wonder too sometimes, that trying things totally cold first. I mean, it's the same thing in the studio. That first take on a record is kind of magical. So in a way, you don't want to overthink that. You just want to say, let's just do it, right? And then sometimes you get that take, and then each successive take is worse,
Yeah,
for a
just
little while.
the diminishing returns, like,
Yeah,
we've all been there.
totally. It happens all the time, and it sounds like there's that potential. So again, it's like, yeah, you kind of have had all those experiences, and then seems like you have to take that and say, okay, what can I line all of this stuff up so that when I go to hit the ball, everything's kind of taken care of. That's really
Yeah.
fascinating.
It was all data driven, like you just kind of said too, right? It's like I think I had to do some contests. I had to go to Winfield and do this
Hmm.
before I even knew what to do most effectively for myself after. you know?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it took some doing. So if you're listening to this and you're like, I'm interested in doing a contest, it's like, just get your arrangements out and go try it. Do the quick and dirty version of it. You know what I mean? Just get the arrangements out and go have fun and try the experience out, and then try to figure out how to do it best for yourself. Cause it's like, that video that David just released recently, about like you just got to rip the Band-Aid off. You got to go to the jam session. You'll never be ready if you're waiting to be ready. You know what I mean? To
Yes.
like
Yeah.
go
Yeah. Yeah.
do it,
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Yeah.
would I would highly suggest that for anyone that's, watching and or listening to this who's interested in a contest. Like, how do I get my foot in the door? Write some fiddle tune arrangements. That's step one, and then just go do it. You know,
Hmm.
and then you can pedantically pull your process apart like I have, and you
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
have an hour-long podcast episode with your friend talking about it.
Which I hope it doesn't add any kind of psychological turmoil to your already, I'm sure you're already spending a lot of time kind of
Seriously,
ruminating
bro, this
over all of it.
I learned stuff about my process just having this conversation with you over the
Mm.
last hour. Like, and that's how the Winfield documentary thing has been too, because those guys, they've been very respectful. Like, when I'm in the space of the contest, they're just kind of, there'll be cameras 20 feet away, and they're taking shots and doing stuff, but they're not like asking me questions or getting up in my business too much during the contest. And then after, we had some pretty reflective conversations, and I learned something every time about myself,
Mm.
just because a smart person like you is on the other end asking a question and kind of curious about it. Um, so yeah, thanks for being curious about this, dude, because I think I actually learned some stuff about my
Oh,
my
that's great.
process here today.
Yeah. No, it's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, and I think what it reminds me, yeah, of course, um, this is the same advice that we give people about going to a jam or taking lessons or anything that you kind of feel like you need a certain level of preparation before you do it, where you really don't know what you need until you go and find out. And I've heard it described as being a glutton for punishment. I think there's, I don't want to sugarcoat it, but there's the reality that getting out of your comfort zone and trying something new, while it is the best thing for you, by definition involves some pain, right? It's like you can and
Yes.
can't. There's some expectation that you have, and then you don't meet that, or it doesn't go the way you thought it did, or whatever. There can be awkward moments when you meet people the first time. There's all this stuff, and that is the main ingredient of these experiences. You kind of have to, you really have to look inside and think, when this hurts, right? When it hurts that I messed up my arrangement, or I go to a jam and I don't know the right songs, or whatever thing happens that you think disqualifies you from participating because it sucks, it just like feels awful. You have to try to then be honest with yourself. It's like, is that painful because it's life threatening? Obviously not. Is it painful because I had a certain idea of who I thought I was, and this is challenging that, and so maybe my identity isn't quite what I thought it was, in which case, that's kind of great, if you're willing to look inside and say, like, I had this big idea that I was so great at this thing that I do, and then it turns out I'm not able to do it in this circumstance, or whatever it is. You're faced with the reality of this is what it is, right? Oh, I thought I knew a bunch of tunes, and I went to a jam and I didn't know any of the tunes.
Oh, yeah.
Why have I been doing all this, right? You kind of, it becomes so dramatic so quickly. I've had all these experiences and
Yeah,
continue
it
to.
sounds like a man who's speaking from
Yeah,
personal
exactly.
experience with
Yeah,
this.
exactly. Yeah, definitely. And so you kind of really have to look at it as, um, is this really serious, from a health and safety perspective, which basically never is. It almost never is a real problem in that way, in a way that anyone should be concerned. It is just confronting your ego, and then confronting, why am I doing this in the first place? Because what we described in the beginning of this podcast, or early on in this podcast, the real benefit of these experiences of playing music with other people or going to these competitions, your favorite parts of these that you're describing is the community, the people that you've met, and kind of the shared experience of doing this difficult thing. At no point did you, in this whole process, talk about how badly you want to win, which is not to say that that's not a part of this process, but it's not the long lasting, meaningful, experience. The same thing goes for going to a jam. You're not really there to impress people, obviously. So when these things happen and your ego is kind of bruised by your negative experience, to me, what happens is I realize, oh, I thought I was doing this one thing. I thought I was going to have fun with my friends. I thought I was going to share music with this audience. And when my ego is bruised, I realize, oh, I was showing off. I was trying to impress people. I was trying to tell people via my musicality and saying, look, we should be friends because I'm able to do this. And so I'm on your level. Or I was trying to impress, my favorite banjo player who's in the audience at the festival. And I thought, so and so will think this is cool. And then you crash and burn. And I didn't
Like,
realize that's what I was trying to do until you're hurt. And then you say, I wasn't doing what I thought I was. I wasn't in this for what I thought I was. And that can be such a powerful, transformative moment, if you are a glutton for punishment and you're willing to look at that and say, what a blessing to be shown the truth of how I feel about this, so I can reflect and kind of recalibrate. I can prepare differently to do these things.
man, the trip to Winfield last year for me was worth every dollar that I spent because of what you just said.
Mm,
I learned, so that first year, I thought I learned, oh wow, I'm not as bad as I thought I was. I actually made the finals. I placed second. This is crazy. So
Yeah.
my mind the next year was like, I should be able to win this thing. And there's that nasty word again. You
Should.
know what I
Yeah.
mean? So like I was prepping for the wrong thing. And guess what? I got to Winfield. I made the finals, which was awesome. And then I kind of crashed out a little bit. I didn't play as well as I could have. Carl Miner also happened to show up that day, which will throw a wrench in anyone's plan. Um, and guess what? We got backstage, and I remember the moment plain as day. I'll remember this for the rest of my life. The woman that was passing out the awards, they kind of do this dramatic thing when they collect all the finalists backstage, where they put you in a circle and they go around and they're kind of like, and, fifth place goes to Hayes Griffin, and they'll just like, be scanning her. So like when she said my name first, and that's the way that I took it, was that my points scored the lowest out of the finalists and the judges last year. She said that. So my heart sank. I was like, oh my God, I was the worst
Yeah.
out of all five of these guys standing right here. How embarrassing. You know what I mean? And then like I get back to the hotel room and I was like peeved off, you know what I mean? I was like, I was not in a good mental state the rest of the day. And what I realized is that I was being a big baby. I like the whole idea of it was what you just said. Like I was given a blessing that day because it's like, guess what? Like because of who showed up that day and because of how my stuff sounded against theirs, the people that just happened to be sitting in that trailer next to the stage thought that my stuff was in last place. And that's not like a total value judgment of who I am or what I am. It's just how the cards shook out that day. You know what I mean? How they
Yeah.
landed that day. And I think the greatest lesson that I took from that was that, oh my God, I lost my way. Like I should
Yeah.
have been focused on the music the whole time. If I was focused on remaining with my breath, like feeling how my body was interacting with this stuff in the moment, putting the music forward, like taking that joy that I have for being a part of this community and just kind of like focusing on those things. That's actually more of a winning formula than it is to like really get down on yourself because, oh God, I didn't win. You know what I mean? I didn't do the thing. And I think shame and embarrassment, and that's just like my own personal journey, had a lot to do with that. It's like my dad was a coach, my brother's a high level athlete, all these kind of things. So it's like, it's something to be like losing is not a good thing, right?
Yeah.
But actually in that moment it was a total blessing because I realized at that point in time like where my mindset had gone wrong in the process and got back to myself afterward.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's really amazing. I mean, what a kind of what a great tool for realizing something that I think any of us can apply to any part of our life, but there's not too many situations where you're kind of summoning that experience. Like that's the thing. By showing up, you're inviting that experience because no matter what, you're gonna have some experience of your identity being challenged in some way or whatever it is, and I think at any time any of us could have that same realization about any aspect of our life. But again, kind of it sounds like you're a glutton for punishment, that you're
I'm a glutton for
or even
punishment.
even when seemingly it sounds like you weren't always, or at different parts of the experience, that's the wave that you ride, which is that makes it so tricky, is that like at various parts of this experience, you do have that mindset and then you can be taken out of it. And it's like, it's really, at no point is the point of the meditation and the practice to ensure that at all times you will be perfect. It's like, can I right the ship? Can I pivot? Can I turn around? Can I, I find that to be the most challenging thing. Is it's the kind of the lost cause of like, well, I did all this work and now I'm pissed at myself. And it's like, well, if I give all that up now and I start being nice to myself, what was the point of that whole thing then? If like you don't want to let go of it, you don't want to let go of it, you don't want to, and it really is the only way forward is just like, wait a minute, all right, let me just take a moment. How hard is that to do? Really hard, but that's to me, that's like the highest skill that I could achieve in any capacity is that. And I think it's really cool to hear your experience of having that happen and having that like really help you in your journey to continue doing this, but also just in your life. I mean, it's cool to hear experiences where it's not just a suggestion. It's a, hey, this happened and it was great. This was awesome that this happened
Yeah.
this way.
I can't tell you enough about how this experience has improved my life in
Mm,
general, just like my outlook and giving people grace and giving myself grace. I think I have more trouble with that than I do other people, honestly, is like
sure, sure.
forgiving yourself more, Um, and like, and this will be my closing thought, I was sitting on stage in the second round at Rockygrass this past weekend, and I get to the very last B part of Southern Flavor, my first arrangement, and I short circuited. My hand didn't go where it was supposed to go, and I stopped for about two quarter notes, you know?
Wow. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And in that moment, I smiled because I knew what had happened. I couldn't summon the rest of the arrangement at that point in time, but I knew what had happened. I smiled and I improvised my way to the end, got out of it, and then like because I knew what had happened, it was like my mind lost the thread for a minute, but it's okay, you know.
Yeah.
I got to my second arrangement and crushed it, note for
Great.
note.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like that's to me that's the power of what we just described. If I hadn't been meditating and if I hadn't been thinking about it and framing it the way we just said over the last year, that hiccup could have completely derailed the train for the rest of the round. You know what I mean? It could have meant like the spiral into self-judgment and like I failed. I just screwed up in front of 1,000 people on the main stage at Rockygrass, like that, how embarrassing, right? Like that's not how I take it at all. I hope anyone listening to this or anyone that saw that can know it for what it was. You know what I mean? That was me actually summoning something that I've really worked hard on. And I was proud of myself in that moment for just being able to
Mm,
like smile, you know what I mean? And like keep going because what else are you supposed to do in life? You know,
right. Right.
you know?
Yeah. At what point is the best suggestion to give up? So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, that's really great. Cool. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed and this as much as I did. This to me is the best use of the podcast. Is just weekly lessons and advice and guidance from Hayes. Which I am receiving at no charge. This is great. If you're interested in more of this great information from Hayes, you can find him as he will describe various places online.
Yeah, you can find me at hayesgriffin.club. That's my guitar club. So if you want to hop on some Zoom calls with me every week and ask me why I screwed up that arrangement at Rockygrass in the second round, you can sign up for the guitar club. You can also check out my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Hayes Griffin. That's HAYESGRIFFIN. And we've got all sort of cool collaborations coming out there. Videos with Eli, videos with David Benedict, videos with Marcel, all that kind of stuff. So, Eli, where can the folks find you?
You can find me, Eli Gilbert Guitar, on YouTube, among other places. Though, if you're at the Flatpicking podcast, I suppose you're interested in the guitar playing.
Yes.
And yeah, and as we get a little closer, for full transparency, we're recording this before any of the episodes have been released, and so we are within a couple days of this recording, releasing the first episode of the podcast, and so there are a couple things we need to get in line, but there will be places where you can leave comments, ask questions. Feel free to do so, and in theory, in future, we will be responding to and giving answers to those questions.
Yes.
So we'll see. But yeah, check out the description or the show notes for any of the platforms that you're checking this out on, and you'll get any of the relevant information of any of the stuff we've mentioned. But otherwise, folks, that's going to do it for now. This has been another exciting episode of the Flatpicking Podcast. So thank you, folks. We'll see you next time.
Catch you down the line.